We are now recording on malcolmpresents.com with Deborah Manning on our show called Conversations with Deborah, a bi-coastal dialogue. And it's myself, again, Malcolm Berman, and Deborah Manning, who is in beautiful South Carolina.
It is.
But she's a immigrant from Santa Barbara, actually California, Southern California, the last place, Santa Barbara. Good. Well, good afternoon, Deborah. How are you doing?
Good afternoon. How are you, Malcolm?
Pretty good.
Wonderful. Well, I have to say, we're coming up tomorrow on our 6th anniversary of being here in South Carolina. As you mentioned, I'm a native Californian, and one of my last positions was as a news reporter in Los Angeles. Also worked for National Public Radio in LA, as well as PBS down in San Diego. So it's been an interesting time here. I have very much enjoyed it. It's very much different than Southern California, obviously. Last night was well, let's say a 6-cat night. Yes, we do have 6 foundling cats who found us. The one that's over here is our littlest one. His name is Max. And it was cold last night. They issued freeze warnings, but of course, this being the first week of November, for heaven's sakes, what else do I expect?
How cold is cold?
Cold was, we had a freeze warning, so we had to go
under
again.
32?
Yeah, it was starting there. And just before dawn, it was starting to get just down into there. And what we ended up doing is we've already prepared all of the gardens and taken all of the delicate plants in. And then, of course, my husband, Fish, took the time to take the garden hoses off and put some protective areas, little cones on it. We took our Meyer lemon in, which is on our front porch. And this year I managed to get, it looks like about almost 2 dozen little Meyer lemons on it. So it'll be fantastic to be able to make my lemon tart pie and my lemon curd. So it's fun. It's a lot of fun here. It really is a lot of fun here. So what would you like to talk about today, my dear?
I'd like to talk about cats.
Yes, what about cats?
And do you think that they are spirits that are brought back to in life? Some people give mystical type of personalities to cats.
I don't know necessarily about that, but I do have to say that each one of our cats has a different personality, totally different personality. People think it's odd that I have as many cats as I do. No, I'm not a cat lady, but I will not turn down an animal in need. Our neighborhood is just north of downtown Greenville, about 3 miles. And we're semi-suburban, semi-rural here. We're surrounded by, by 100-foot oaks and what have you. But the cats showed up on our doorstep. Each one has a separate story, but they have different personalities, and you have to integrate all of those personalities there. Max, for example, our littlest one, he is he's quite the crazy cat. He doesn't particularly like discipline, which is fine, which is great. He wakes us up in the morning around 5 o'clock, right on the dot. He's got his little cat watch on, and he does that. But as far as being spirits, sometimes you think so, because as I say, each one has a different personality. Gracie is our little gray and white mama cat. And if you ever saw Downton Abbey, she is like Mrs. Hughes. She runs the entire household. She's very disciplined about things. She doesn't like fights and what have you. Then the little brother we have besides Max is Ziggy. And Ziggy came to us, literally was abandoned in the house behind us. And it took us 2 days to find him. He was just a kitten covered with fleas and terribly scared, but he calmed down. Our biggest one is Sylvester. Sylvester is a tuxedo cat, and he came to us, and I have no idea, because he loves workman types of things. He loves being around saws, loves being around all kinds of tools.
Maybe he used to be a carpenter in his previous life.
You know what? I think what he ended up doing was climbing into a truck, and someone was doing some work here, and sure enough, he ended up jumping out. But he came to us, and our last one, of course, was Smitty, who was the brother of Gracie. And each one of them has a different personality. What's been interesting is And I do watch the program, My Cat from Hell. The gentleman who does it, and I cannot remember the gentleman's name, but it's on the streaming service.
I've never seen it.
But-
Yeah.
Well, I have to tell you, he treats the cats individually. You do have to treat the cats individually, and you do have to keep them very disciplined about things. They get it. They understand it. You don't have to raise a hand to them. You do it with your voice and with lots of love and lots of affection, but they clearly understand what the rules are. For example, no incredible fights. We don't allow fights. We don't. We require that they come in at night, especially now with it getting so cold. Everybody is in. We have 3 that go outdoors, but all 3 of them are required to come in just around 9 o'clock or so. So we'll call for them. They know their names and they come on in, and they're protected. I don't want my cats running around the neighborhood bugging people. I just don't.
Also with, I don't know, I know in LA over here, where I live, they have a lot of coyotes.
Yeah. We have a lot of coyotes here, not as many as we had in Santa Barbara though. And we have a lot of deer, which has been interesting to see.
Yeah,
We have peacock.
The deers don't attack cats.
No, but the groundhogs do here.
Do they?
We have a lot of opossums that are here. So it's quite the menagerie along with all of these cats. But as I say, being here in South Carolina has been very, very interesting. We're starting to see a great awakening, especially here in South Carolina. I met with the Attorney General of the state, Alan Wilson, and he is joining with a number of other states to attempt to stop some of the Biden administration's overreach, specifically the mandates for vaccines that now are going to be coming into effect January the 4th. And South Carolina is one of the states that says, nope, we're not going to wear masks. You are not going to be mandated to have the vaccination. And he's joining with a number of other states to be able to stop the federal overreach. And of course, what's interesting about South Carolina, my dear, is of course, this is exactly where the Civil War started. So for me as a Californian, there's quite a bit of history here to learn. There truly is.
Yeah, well, some people in the South don't think there was a Civil War, don't think they lost it.
Well, they're wrong because they did.
Do you agree with them that there shouldn't be a mandate for vaccinations?
Well, I think at this point now, I do think it's an overreach. The way I've explained it to a number of my friends who have come to apologize to me, saying that I'm so sorry I haven't gotten the vaccination, is stop apologizing. I'm fully vaccinated. I took my booster shots. I took a lot of, pardon my language, crap from a lot of my friends saying, why did you take a booster and all of that? It's my choice. It's my choice. Both my husband and I decided to do the booster shot. It's my choice. But it's also their choice not to take it. I'm fully vaccinated. My husband's fully vaccinated because we're in that vulnerable group. And so are you. I have nothing to fear from these people, nothing to fear from the unvaccinated. And to force people out of their livelihood, out of their work, especially hospital workers, first responders, all of those people that were there helping us when the dark days of the pandemic started in March of 2020. I don't understand why we're putting up with this. And in many cases, we're not. People are quitting and they're saying no longer. We're starting to have demonstrations here in Greenville with the healthcare workers. Once again, we're not vaccinated because we didn't have a vaccination until just recently, until the first of this year. And I just don't think people should be losing their jobs over something like this, especially now. As I mentioned before, I went to our first outdoor gathering of people, over 300,000 people on Main Street in Greenville. And those folks, nobody was wearing masks. And guess what? That was a 3-day event. Guess what? No increase in COVID cases, none.
Yeah.
And those cases that did actually happen, the breakthrough cases, because it's highly contagious. I had it in February of 2020. But those cases did not result in people going to the hospital. We've now had, I think, a grand total of like 300 people now who have tested positive, and a fraction of those have actually gone.
Well, I can't talk about your numbers because I don't know. But the question
Sure.
is, did you think it's only people should be have the vaccine optional? Do you think all vaccines should be optional? Do you think like the polio vaccine should be optional? Do you think the all
I
the
think
the,
no.
the
I think going to that conclusion of all vaccines being optional, that's a straw man argument, if you don't mind me saying so, Malcolm. Um, I think we need to address the COVID situation, and I think having first responders and other people losing their jobs because of the fact that they have not been vaccinated is ridiculous. It's not right. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, don't you think that the president or the federal government should have a certain say in, especially something that's killed 750,000 Americans just in
Well,
this country?
Well, I do have to say that it is not, according to the Constitution, is not the federal government's right to be able to do something like this. And of course, the other problem that this administration has is it is not forcing vaccinations on the 1.7 million people who have come across the border from other
No,
countries.
I disagree that they are in a way. The border situation, number one, which both of us agree are out of control.
Yeah,
But
good.
and parts of it is due because of Title 42. I disagree with a lot of things which is happening on the border,
Good.
which but I don't think that's in comparison to people that we do have a certain amount of control here. And I think there is a since the vaccine has been given, the amount of death and hospitalization has gone down. So I don't know whether we can be considered a pandemic anymore. But basically, it's I would say it's a cause and effect. Basically, it's because we had the vaccine that the amount of death. But it's a national crisis.
But the problem is at this point right now, we're in the midst of trying to economically come back in terms of recovery. It does not make any common sense to make the mandate so strict and so rigid that we're having people lose their employment. We have 10 million plus jobs that are now vacant. We need to have people going back to work.
Yeah, but
to force those people out doesn't make any sense, because at this point right now, the pandemic seems to be easing.
And why is the
pandemic was going down?
And why is the pandemic easing? Is it just disappeared?
I think it's a combination of the vaccinations. I'll be honest with you. I don't understand why people don't want to get the vaccination.
Okay.
I've heard a whole variety of reasons behind it. And on the converse side, people don't understand why I took the vaccination and why I even took a booster. Okay. It's my decision. It's my body and it's my decision.
Right. I agree. But I think if it's your decision, I agree with that. But then it's your decision to leave your job and not take the vaccine.
Well, I don't think it should be a mandate, a requirement. It does not make any sense, because any of us who are vaccinated, we have nothing to fear from those who are unvaccinated. And I think this hard-handed way in which this administration is shoving this down people's throats, people are starting to react. It's called the Great Awakening. And I've talked about it on Facebook. And what's happening, of course, you saw the gigantic reversal of the governorship win with Glenn Youngkin, a Republican who they've not seen a Republican in Virginia in how many dozens of years. People are now saying
I think it's 20
enough.
years.
Well, they're saying enough is enough.
That's something in this situation. I think it's a no-win situation for Biden. Why? If he has a mandate for the vaccine, the government is too much in control. If he didn't have any mandate, they said, "Oh, look at him! He doesn't have control. He's a wuss. He doesn't want to exert his power."
I disagree. I think that it could have been. I think it could have been handled far more smoothly.
Well, it could have been handled more smoothly, but I think there has to be a mandate. I'll tell you the biggest fault of Biden, which so far I can see, and I forget who did it, who said it, but I've heard it requoted. It's Biden acts more like a senator than a president.
That's
He,
interesting
he,
comment.
he doesn't, which I feel like that there, for some reason, he is more of the mediator. He wants to, talk to the senators and, get people to agree with him, but he's acting like he was a senator versus a president. A president is more directed, more powerful. That's an image.
But your direct president, who was Trump, was soundly criticized for being as direct as he was. That's a very interesting comment, because I have a tendency of agreeing with you on that.
No, okay, get right.
I do want a leader. I want a leader. I don't want a
Right.
follower, and I don't want a glad hander.
But Trump is an aberration. Trump did things. He did things that were totally screwball. He put people into office that had no business being in office. He had put people being into powerful positions who basically was in powerful positions because they supported him or gave him money, which they can't even get. They can't get. What do you think of the Postmaster General?
Well, I must say I'm not a real big fan of the post office, to be honest with you.
Who's still there?
No, but I do think that many of the policies, and you and I, once again, the reason that we talk this way is because we're trying to find common ground. You and I have found common ground. If we eliminate the personality of Trump and we simply look at the policies, we have found a lot of common ground. The issue I have at this point right now is I truly want, because I'm an American, I truly want to see some common ground, something of good coming out of the Biden administration. For example, right now, Nancy Pelosi is trying to push down everybody's throats a $1.7 trillion Build Back Better plan without having any type of a score from the Congressional Budget Office. You can't do that. We've got to know exactly what the economic impact is of all of this. And I understand where President Biden is coming from. It's understandable. But I do think we've got to know exactly how we are going to be spending the money, why we are spending the money. And the other thing I found is very odd. You understand that they're going to be, that in the bill, they're going to be having amnesty for all immigrants. That's number one. But number two, they're also going to be having an increase in the SALT deductions. That's the state and local tax deductions for mortgages, up to $80,000. You realize who that benefits. It doesn't benefit you or me. It benefits $1,000. Why would for wealthy people to write that off their taxes? Once again, that's craziness. I don't agree with the spending. I would love to be able to see, and one of the things that President Trump did was eliminate much of the red tape. Many people who are middle class or lower middle class, and even especially many of the migrants that are coming in, they start by opening grocery stores, by opening small businesses and what have you. The way the tax is going to be working out, even though President Biden says that anybody making less than $400,000 won't be touched, we will be touched. We've already been touched. We've been touched by the fact that at this point right now, gasoline here in South Carolina is now going up. We're up at $3.25 now. A year ago, we were at $1.95. So that's a tax. That's a tax on every one of us.
And that's Biden's fault.
It is Biden's fault only because, once again, he's trying to push this Green New Deal much too fast. We need to have the technology catch up with us.
But I have a question for you.
Go ahead.
According to the scientists, we are going to a deadline. There's certain things that are happening now that might be not being able to correct in the environment. We might be going too far. Now you see right now what's happening, whether it be fires, whether it be floods, whether it be tornadoes, whether it be hurricanes. There is a cause for that. And basically, I think about 80–90% of the scientists believe it's because of the carbon footprint. And the carbon footprint basically is because we're burning fossil fuels. Now you can't do this gradually. I mean, I'm not saying we're not the only country. There has to be a consensus of countries, because otherwise we're all going to be destroying each other. But
That's right.
again, which we talked about before, the US has to be the leader. It
Well,
can't say,
unfortunately,
we're gonna wait till
unfortunately,
China does it. We're
China,
gonna-
China and Russia are thumbing their nose at the whole idea.
Right, but we're
And
not
the
doing, we're not doing,
problem, and the problem is at this point right now, that if we all live in this world, why in the world would we go ahead and give up our energy independence and allow us to be able to have no independence? And in fact, President Biden was begging OPEC to increase their oil production.
Well-
OPEC is no friend of ours. We knew that from the
I have a
Carter
que-
administration.
I mean, my big question is, why aren't we investing that money as developing alternatives, fuel
Well,
sources?
you know how that basically is done. It's called basic. The concept is the basis of what's called opportunity zones. Tim Scott, our South Carolina senator, championed something called opportunity zones. What it basically, and I'll get down to the bottom line because I have an accounting background and whatnot.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is that you use carrots, not sticks. You go ahead and you give tax credits to be able to convince companies, and they will, if you give them tax credits, they will start to look alternative energy. Another part of alternative energy, you know, and I read a very interesting article in the Wall Street Journal. What's that?
Are you getting?
Fish, my husband just came in and said the reconciliation infrastructure bill delayed again at this point.
Yeah, by the way, that makes it Democratic looks bad. But I mean, just jumping to that.
But the article I was reading was very interesting. You know, it was talking about of all things, going back to nuclear energy. I found it fascinating listening to nuclear energy. And it does not have a carbon footprint. It is, for example, you have nuclear subs, for heaven's sakes. Amazing energy.
Well, that might be the answer. I don't know.
I think it would be an interesting answer.
Yeah, and it's an interesting alternative. But there are tax incentives. There are tax incentives to the automotive people to do electric cars. There are tax incentives to the consumer to buy electric. So we are doing the tax. Incentives.
Well, what I'm saying is, you don't mandate, you don't impose, you don't penalize, you incentivize, and that's exactly what the prior administration did. That prior administration, whom you don't want to talk about, but they ended up getting rid of the regulations and many regulations, and that opened up a tremendous amount of ingenuity, a tremendous amount
right,
of
but
and that's what America is based on. That kind of entrepreneurship.
But their regulations, majority of the regulations that they did away with, let big business do the pollution, to pollute the waters, pollute the atmosphere.
It also made us energy independent. So once again, maybe then at that point right now, then you start to look. See, the problem with wind is exactly what happened in Texas. When we came across the country 6 years ago, unbelievable number of these windmills. But the windmills are in fact not working, especially when, for example, in Britain this summer, there was no wind. There was no wind. Who would have thought about that?
We're not talking about one way of doing it. I'm not a scientist, and I'm not
either.
The industry. But all I know is that we have to do something. We can't say, okay, we want to do more coal.
But you can't completely cripple America to be able to meet these arbitrary figures. We need to have our energy independence. We cannot be asking our enemies to be able to help us with oil. We can't do that, Malcolm.
We'll never do that. We have enough oil here.
Well, we're certainly not pumping it with all of the restrictions on it. There are unbelievable numbers of restrictions that have been reimposed. I'm not even talking about the Keystone Pipeline. I'm talking about restrictions now in Alaska in terms of pumping oil there and what have you. Now, I understand the argument. We've got to get on the right horse, but we cannot at this point right now completely give up our energy independence as we have. And because otherwise what is going to happen, you realize as the cold weather comes in, because I'm looking at snow weather out there, that natural gas prices have gone from $1 up to about $5.
You got to move back to,
Unbelievable
you got to
cost.
move back to California.
I can't move back to California. I can't afford it, dearie.
Wait,
It's my home state, my home.
Anyway, just switching around a little bit, which I wanted to find, ask
You
you
mind if I
about,
have, I'm gonna have some coffee. I gotta have a little coffee here. Go ahead.
about the Supreme Court that said that they were considering having people being able to have concealed weapons.
Oh, jeez. That is a state issue. That is a state issue.
Well, you don't think South Carolina would have
South Carolina already has concealed
Concealed
weapons,
weapons?
has open carry. And like I told you the last time we chatted about things, when I see an open carry individual, I turn tail, I walk away. I don't need to have it. I am a gun owner, absolutely a proud gun owner. My late husband and I did private investigation work, so we absolutely had to be able to handle firearms, all kinds of firearms. In fact, I was a teacher for some of the Wells Fargo employees, teaching them how to handle shotguns and how to handle all kinds of weapons. But I am not wild about being in the same room because I don't know who this individual is.
Yeah, aside from the fact, does it know how to handle a gun?
That's the point. And I think that it has to be, it sounds ridiculous, but it has to be like a driver's license. I want people to be trained. For example, I mean, the situation with actor, what was his, Alec Baldwin?
Alec Baldwin.
Shooting that poor assistant director. And he didn't know that the gun was loaded. Oh my God, Malcolm, when you hold a firearm, it's always loaded. You always think it's loaded. But bottom line is that, I mean, that simply is exemplifying the whole argument with firearms. You treat it with respect. It can kill someone, and in this case, it did.
Yeah, well, supposedly the person who gave it to him say that it wasn't loaded, but you don't just, in situations like that, you don't just, which I was reading in an article in today's LA Times, that it happens more often than not. That there have been other accidents, of course, possibly another deaths, not as an actor as famous as Alec Baldwin doing it, but there have been over the years, and they want to re-regulate, especially now that they have other type of you can reproduce the sound of a gun without firing a gun. But I can imagine. I'm from New York City.
I think that all gun owners need to be required to have fresh training once a year. Well, I think that's very important. And even though
do you think that's going to pass?
I know that, for example, around here in our neighborhood, everybody basically we get retrained. I'm going back to retraining again. I was an instructor, for crying out loud. I'm going to go back to retraining.
But do you, is that optional, or is in order to retain your permit for the gun, you have to go to retraining?
You have to go to retraining if you want to have a concealed weapons permit, and also with open carry, you have to have training. However, I do think that should be on an annual basis because you need to be reminded. You simply do.
And you have to have your training on the type of weapon that you have.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you have, I don't know, but if you have a 45, you have to learn how to, your permit to 45, you have to train a 45 versus if you have a 22 or.
That's right. That's right. You and I agree on that completely. If I have a shotgun, I had better be able to handle the shotgun. If I've got a 9mm, I better be able to, or a 45 or a 38, I better be able to handle. And if I have all of those weapons, then I need to be retrained on every single one.
That we agree. I don't see anything wrong with weapons as long as you know how and you have a background check. Absolutely.
And I think, the other thing I don't understand, and I disagree with the NRA on this, the situation with background checks. Background checks, period. It's very simple. I mean, essentially, even when I got a driver's license, when you get a driver's license here in South Carolina, you have to have a very thorough background check. In fact, when we got our licenses here, the lady that was helping us, I had to go back 3 separate times because they wanted to have a birth certificate, they wanted to have social security card, blah, 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 and all of this. And she kept apologizing. I said, stop apologizing. I got to have these things, okay? It's very simple. I made a mistake. You're asking for the stuff. You need to identify who the heck I am. So guess what? I went back 3 times and Have all my
And-
stuff all in the
and-
separate
and
place.
what's with the NRA? Why in such a hurry? Oh, I want to get the gun right away.
Oh, but that's
Why can't you
baloney.
wait a week or 2 weeks?
That's baloney. Even my late husband, Tom, said the same thing. I mean, he was very much a gun advocate, but he said, this is absurd. He said, I am not in that much of a hurry, for crying out loud. And background check needs to be taken care of. It's especially with the way the computers are now.
Yeah.
You can do a quick background
Right.
check, for crying out loud.
And why do you need a semi-automatic weapon?
What's that?
Why do you need a semi-automatic weapon?
Oh, it's just, for
No.
example, a 9mm, quote unquote, is considered to be a semi-automatic weapon. 9mm is a very smooth operating weapon, and
Yeah,
it's,
but why do you have to be able to fire, 100 rounds within, a minute?
well, I don't have one of those. I don't have one of
Are
those.
we
I
at
don't-
war? Or you're
No,
knocking out an elephant and you can't
I
even
don't
do
have-
elephants?
I do not understand the reason for it, and so you're not going to get any complaint from me, although, once again, many of my buddies here say, well, you're not supporting the guns. I said, I am supporting it for protection, okay? Having 100 rounds, I mean, our next door neighbor has one of those, and I said, just keep it to yourself, okay?
Sure.
Just keep it
If,
to
if you see a line of bullet holes on top of your roof, you know who it is.
I know. And
Okay, now-
unfortunately, it's that type of mentality that gives gun ownership a bad rap.
Mhm.
It shouldn't have a bad rap. But
Mhm.
once again, you need to be trained on an annual basis. You truly do, on each and every one of your weapons. You and I agree on that completely.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that, again, there's so many things that we do agree upon.
Yeah.
It's a lot of things we disagree upon, but that's normal.
But that's the whole reason for this conversation. It's that we need to find common ground, and we are finding common ground. And it's been very interesting, because as I go to many of these meetings, I do pass out my business card, and I have a number of people who are starting to watch now. And I want to say welcome to all of you who are now starting to watch the conversations.
But I was
Yes.
telling you, you should get you have my card, a similar type of card with me, like I have,
Okay.
with your
All right.
picture on it.
That's a good idea.
It ain't that expensive.
No, you're right. It isn't. It isn't. Like the truck driver, could you believe the truck driver in Virginia who overturned the Democratic senator, and he spent, what was it, $155?
Yeah, well, I don't know,
$155.
yeah. Well, there are lots of things I want to talk to you. I want to talk to you about hooray for Biden type of thing. I wanted to talk to you about hooray for Brandon.
Oh, you mean, let's go, Brandon.
Let's go, Brandon, yeah. And it's fun, but I don't think that should be, US senator should be saying that. But anyway, do you realize that our half hour is up?
Can't believe it.
Yeah.
There's a lot to talk about,
We
Malcolm.
just said hello.
Yeah.
What I want to do, ask you also is, what type of machine, new computer did you get? The iPad?
I got it. I decided to try it. We're going to try this out because I would like to be able to move things around. What I'm on right now is a regular desktop, which is fine. But I decided to get the Facebook portal. I've got it right here. And we're going to be working on that. This is this little portal here.
Yeah.
And it's got a little carrying blah, blah, blah. It's on a battery situation. And what's been interesting is as I'm making my my rounds to the various meetings and what have you, people want to talk about things. So we're going to do some experimentation, because I think it would be interesting to have our listeners get a chance to hear somebody other than us. But it'll bring me back to my old reporting days, I'll tell you. It'll be
Well,
fun.
I'd love to take this on the road,
That would be fun. That would be
because
fun.
I'd love to speak to the people also and see, what their comments are. Maybe I could learn, I haven't, stopped, hopefully I haven't stopped learning.
Well, you know what? It's very interesting here in South Carolina. A lot of people poo-poo it because they hear the Southern accent and they think that people here are stupid because of the Southern accent. Nothing could be further from the truth. These are very plain-spoken people for the most part, and very smart people, very hometown, down-to-earth, very friendly, understanding people, generous to a flaw. I have learned so much from them, and I am so grateful to have the neighbors that I have, and I'm so grateful to be here in South Carolina, because it is a re-education. There is something other than Los Angeles and New York. As much as I love LA, as much as I love New York, there is something very American about being here in South Carolina and learning new ways of living, and it just they're very it's been a very interesting experience. And
Just one, as you said that, the thing about living in New York or living in LA, and that's basically where I'm from, is I've met people from all over the world.
and you'll meet them here in South Carolina as well. You really will. And the reason is because here in Greenville, we've got international companies. We've got GE, we've got the BMW, Michelin, Fluor. We have all types of international companies.
You have international companies, but are the people manning working in the international
Yes.
companies international?
Yes, they are. They're coming here. They're coming here. We've met people from the Congo of all places. We've met people from Berlin, all kinds of different people. And it's an interesting blending of nationalities, of racial nationalities, of religious nationalities. It's very interesting blend of
as I said, once you get to learn how to do that computer, we're going to take the show on the road.
Yay, let's do it.
Anyway, keep warm, dress
I will.
warm.
You too.
The thing that I've learned from living in New York, and about 70%, 80% of your heat escapes through your head.
That's right.
So wear a hat.
I will.
'Cause-
Yeah, my best to your dear wife, Anna.
Okay, and send my regards to Fish and tell him I want to get him on the show.
Okay.
And tell him we both share the ethnic of being Jewish, and we like arguing.
That's true, and he loves it.
I mean, I could raise my voice also, but I think when you argue, if you lower your voice, people tend to listen to you more. Anyway, have a great week.
I will. We'll see you next week.
Bye bye.
Okay, bye-bye.